Okay, so in this video, we're going to look at the first 2 pages of Latin of the Aeneid 10 text. And of course, this is part of the villains option, and our villain here is Mezentius, who we meet in the first line, line 689. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole context of this in the poem, because you can easily find summaries of the different sections of the Aeneid online, but what I do want to give you is just a little bit of context about this character Mezentius. Okay, so Mezentius is an Etruscan king. He is, Etruscan refers to an ancient area of Italy called Etruria, which was quite a large part of Italy north of Rome. So Rome is around the southern limit of Etruria. And Mezentius is king of a place called Caere. And I've put a little note about this here on the right. Caere, C-A-E-R-E. Okay. And I've got here a map of Lazio, right? Because remember, Aeneas has arrived in what the Romans called Latium or Latium, L-A-T-I-U-M, which is roughly similar to modern Lazio. Okay, and the leader of all of these Italians, the leader of the native Italians against the Trojans is a man called Turnus, T-U-R-N-U-S. He is from the Rutuli, or the Rutulian people, and he's from a place called Ardea, which you can see down here. In fact, I'll just put a little mark here. Here we go. Right, so where I've just put that circle, right? Turnus comes from Ardea. But one of Turnus's allies is this man, Mezentius. And he is the king, or he was the king, of a place called Caere, an Etruscan place, which is up here, right? Caere is now called Cerveteri. So there it is, right? So to the northwest of Rome. And what has happened is that Mezentius, because he was so bloodthirsty and impious, he was exiled from his home of Caere, and he went to Latium, which is where he became an ally of Turnus. So what you have is you have an alliance between Mezentius and his group of Etruscans, together with Turnus and his Rutulians. So that's one side. The other side is Aeneas and his Trojans, who have come from what we would call northwest Turkey, along with the other Etruscans who didn't like Mezentius and exiled him. Right, so those are the two sides here. Mezentius's Etruscans plus Turnus and his Rutulians versus Aeneas and his Trojans plus the anti-Mezentius Etruscans. Okay, so that's the situation that we are in. And if we now go to the beginning of this text, we start with the word at, which means but. And then I would also translate here interea, which means meanwhile, literally among these things, inter, among, ea, these things, or those things. So meanwhile, by the counsels of Jupiter, okay, so Jovis is the genitive of Jupiter, and monetis is the PPP from monere, right, the having been warned things, and it's neuter because it's things, and it's plural, and it's also ablative because it means by, right? So monetis means by the councils of Jupiter. And then our subject is ardens Mesdentius, fiery Mesdentius. Okay, we have to remember after the end of the Aeneid, the idea is that the Trojans and the Italians will mix together genetically to produce eventually the Romans, and that the Italians provide the kind of tough, courageous side on the whole. So Mesdentius is a symbol, if you like, of that Italian toughness that will become part of the Roman mixture, the Roman DNA. Okay, so meanwhile, by the councils of Jupiter, fiery Mesdentius, succedit plus dative, approaches, and then the dative is pugnai, the fight. And quer, he attacks, invadit, or you could say he invades, the Teucros Ovantes. So Ovantes here is the same as Ovantes, so it's neuter plural, it's accusative plural. And Teucros is another title for the Trojans, right? The Trojans are sometimes called the Teucrians because they had a very early king called Teucer. Okay, so Mesdentius attacks the Trojans, who are winning, right? They are Ovantes. That's where the word ovation comes from in English. And then in the next sentence, the subject is tyranni, or rather, tyranni is an adjective agreeing with the subject acies. So those are both nominative, tyranni, acies. Now, acies are battle lines, and tyranni means Tyrrhenian. Okay, and Tyrrhenian really means Italian. Because if the implication is Italian, because if you look again at this map of Lazio that I just showed you, you have Rome here, right? And then if you go out sort of southwest, you get to Fiumicino Airport and so on. But if you keep going west from there, you get to the Tyrrhenian Sea, right? So therefore Tyrrhenian refers to Italy, basically. It's a poetic way of saying Italian. So if we go back to the text, the Tyrrhenian or Italian battle lines, so this refers to the Etruscans or Italians who are anti-Mesdentius, the ones who kicked him out before. They concurrunt, they run together or rush together. Atque, and then for the next main verb, we have to go to the end of the sentence, instant. They press on, and this takes dative. So they press on the one man, i.e. Mesdentius, with omnibus odiis, with all their hatreds, right? Latin makes odium plural here, whereas in English that would be rather strange, so we would keep it singular, with all their hatred. And the one man, uni, with talis frequentibus, ablative again, with ceaseless or frequent missiles, talis, or spears, or weapons, or something like that. So, and again, here you can notice, right, this repetition of uni, right? There is this idea that Mesdentius it's as if he is one man against everyone else, even though that's not actually the situation. And then, if we go over onto the next page, we get a simile, which is all about Mesdentius. Okay, so we start with ille, which is the subject, and then we get this really long simile in brackets. And then we return to the main narrative. So in fact, ille is the subject of the verb sternit, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 lines later. So let's start with the simile. Okay, so Mesdentius is velut rupes, just as a cliff, or just like a cliff. Quae, okay, so rupes, meaning a cliff, is feminine. So it's agreeing, so therefore quae is agreeing with it. Okay, so just like a rock, a cliff, which prodit, right? This is pro plus ao ire, to go. So which juts, we could say, sticks out in vastum iquor. Okay, iquor literally means a flat surface, right? It's related to the English word equal, so it can mean a plain, plain, or in this case, it's the sea. And it's neuter, which means that vastum is agreeing with it. Okay, so which juts out into the vast sea, or the vast deep. Okay, and then we have another word agreeing with rupes, which is obvia, feminine. And obvia plus dative means sort of in the way of, right? So in the way of, and the dative following it is furies. So in the way of the ragings, or the frenzies or something of the winds, genitive plural, and exposta, exposed, to the sea. So pontus is another poetic word meaning the sea, and here it's dative, exposed to the sea. And exposta is feminine again, so that's still referring to rupes. Okay. So Mezentius is like this cliff which stands firm against the elements. Okay. So like a cliff which juts out, etc. And it, let's see, it perfert. This is from the verb per ferro, literally to carry through. We would say in English to endure. It endures. Cunctam vim. Now, cunctus means whole or entire. So it's just like omnem or totam. Okay. So it endures the whole force, cunctam vim, and threats, atque minas, right? Mina is a threat, of the sky, kaili, genitive singular, and of the sea, marisque. Ipsa, itself, okay, so that's again feminine, referring all the way back to rupes, right? Itself remaining, manens, unmoved, immota. Okay, so immota, yes, is another feminine adjective describing rupes. So Mezentius is like this, yes, this cliff that is being battered on all sides, but nonetheless remains still and steady. Okay, and now let's come back to ille, the subject, referring to Mezentius. What does he do? He sternit, he lays low on the ground, humi, and then the object is Hebrum, Hebrus, who is the prolem Dolicaonis, the offspring of Dolicaon, with whom, or you could say, and with him, cum plus ablative, latagus, and que, palmum fugacem, literally fleeing palmus, or sometimes fugax just implies speed, right? So swift or quick palmus. Said occupat, so then the next main verb is occupare, to strike. So, but he strikes latagus, And then we have an accusative of respect, or actually two accusatives of respect, os and faciem. So literally with respect to his mouth, and i.e. in his mouth, and in his face, that is adversam, turned towards him. So we might say full in the face, or something like that. So he strikes Latagus in the mouth and full in the face with, and now we have a long ablative phrase here, literally with a rock, saxo, and with a huge fragment, ingenti fragmine, of mountain, montis, genitive, singular. Or we could say something like with a huge fragment of mountain rock, something like that. And he allows sinit palmus, he allows Palmus to volvi, literally to turn himself around or to be turned around. That's a passive infinitive, or a present passive or present deponent infinitive. To turn around or writhe slowly, segnem, adjective agreeing with palmum, to writhe slowly. And then we have an ablative absolute, poplite sukiso, with his hamstring having been cut. And quer, he gives donat his weapons, arma, so he gives the weapons of the dead Palmus to Lausus, right? And Lausus, as a bit of context, Lausus is Mezentius's son, okay? So he gives the arms or the weapons to, or the armor to Lausus, to have, habere, to have on his shoulders, ablative, plural, literally with his shoulders, to have on his shoulders. And he also gives Lausus Palmus's cristas, his plumes, to figere, to fix or attach from his crest, vertice, right? So he gives him these feathers to attach to the top of his helmet. Okay, and this is introducing us to the son, Lausus, because this is setting up a kind of pathos, right? Because Lausus, the son, is going to be killed, and Mezentius will, of course, be very grief-stricken by this, and that will lead eventually to the death of Mezentius himself at the end of this book 10.